Hello, this is Team 5 in PCOM 540 with Denise, Ed, Joe, and Carlos at the helm.
The title of our presentation is Canada's Imagined Community Through the Lens of the CBC. As we begin, ask yourself these questions. What is Canada? What does it mean to be Canadian? Your answers may seem obvious, but are they? What factors are they based on? Is it geography? Our history? How about our culture? What about our language and music? And of course our sports. Canada is our country and we are Canadians because we are either citizens of this country or we have chosen to live here. But what is Canada really, and what makes us Canadian? How is it that Canada has come to be constructed as a nation-state? How has the concept of being Canadian come into being? Asking yourself such questions forces you to visualize a community, the imagined community, the one you live in and share with fellow Canadians, most of whom you'll never meet personally. Yet you share a sense of belonging to a community that is distinct politically, socially, and economically from other nation-states. How then are imagined communities formed? An imagined community like Canada has many subcultures based on gender, race, culture, and many other factors. For the purpose of this presentation, we have chosen to focus on two distinct subcultures, Canada's First Nations and the Francophone community. The seminal work of Imagined Communities is Benedict Anderson's Imagined Communities, Reflections on the Origin and Spread of Nationalism. Anderson, 1983, argued that what constitutes an imagined community, such as a nation-state like Canada, is closely tied to shared languages and cultures. He argued that nations are imagined by its citizens because, quote, even members of the smallest nation will never know most of their fellow members, meet them, or even hear of them, yet in the minds of each lives the image of their communion, unquote. For Anderson, a nation like Canada is imagined by three key factors. Number one, the nation is imagined as limited. That is, that it has finite or elastic boundaries beyond which lies other nations, separate and apart from the nation-state. In other words, within the boundaries of Canada lies our nation, separate and distinct from all other nations. Number two, the nation is imagined as sovereign, opposed to hierarchical concepts of what makes a nation, thus making citizens within the imagined nation free within a sovereign state and answerable directly to those counted as members of that state. And number three, the nation is imagined as a community, because it is conceived as being on a common comradeship regardless of the actual inequalities and exploitation within the imagined state. How then do these concepts get played out in our lives as citizens of this imagined community called Canada? And who controls how we imagine this nation-state? An important factor in promoting imagined communities is hegemony. This term refers to a situation where a historical block of powerful groups exercise social authority and leadership over subordinate groups by winning their approval or consent. These dominant groups, or elites, are collectively referred to as the hegem, and as such it will often use its influence to promote a dominant normative culture through political, ideological, social, cultural, and economic positions within the imagined community. Rather than exert direct force, these elites use persuasion to imagine a desired community as a nation-state. Critical to this is the use of state media to promote a collective vision of the imagined community. In Canada, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, or the CBC, is the official state broadcaster and thus a prime communication vehicle for political and media elites to promote how they wish Canadians to see themselves. Because its mandate is to forge a common vision of what Canada is and what it means to be Canadian, the CBC promotes a hegemonic vision of Canada, a pan-Canadian vision based on the founding belief of Canada as established by dual political and linguistic groups, French and English. Emerging from World War II with a greater sense of Canadian identity, Canada's elites sought to redefine Canada as a recognized nation-state. Facing an English-speaking population that still harbored strong allegiance to its British origins, while also seeing a growing sense of Quebec nationalism, Canadian political elites sought ways to enforce a distinct sense of pan-Canadian identity. In 1964, there was a debate going on in Canada that was led by Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson. It was called the Great Flag Debate, and politicians and the media, or Canada's elite, pushed forward their hegemonic views of what their Canada, an imagined community, would look like. Canada's subcultures were not asked to participate.
I believe that today a flag designed around the maple leaf will symbolize and be a true reflection of the new Canada. Today there are 5 million or more Canadians whose tradition is not inherited from the British Isles, but who are descendants of the original French founders of our country. There are another 5 million or more who have come to Canada from other faraway lands, whose heritage is neither British nor French. I believe that a Canadian flag as distinctive as the maple leaf in the Legion badge will bring them all closer, bring all these Canadians closer to us of British stock and make us all better and more united Canadians.
For Prime Minister Pearson, the imagined community was built on traditional English-French elites and largely excluded subcultures such as First Nations and immigrant groups. The grievances of Canada's First Nations and the viewpoints of immigrants and other minority groups were largely shut out, as the dominant message became, "Be Canadian by becoming like us." In this case, being like us meant assenting to New Canada, as a nation ruled by its traditional and English elites and based on a distinctly capitalistic political and economic system. The concept of the imagined community, that is Canada, becomes difficult to maintain when political and cultural elites within one of the two founding nations promotes a separate imagined community based on its own linguistic and cultural identity. In essence, when a subculture of the pan-Canadian hegemon asserts its own vision of an imagined community, Canada as a nation and as an imagined community is undermined.
English-French tensions, particularly within Quebec, the home of the French fact, in North America, are particularly threatening to the French-English duality upon which Canada's foundation is based. As a linguistic and cultural minority within the imagined community called Canada, Francophones are a natural subculture within the Canadian nation. However, this subculture has its own elites that promote its own hegemonic vision of the imagined community based on the French language and